We would like to thank our affirmative colleagues for their continued engagement in this debate. We are presenting the negative rebuttal closing argument: federal spending should remain at current levels. We would like to indicate that the burden of proof has not been met by our affirmative colleagues, and they have not prevailed in this debate. There have been several factors which have limited their presentation of information, such as inconsistencies in the arguments that they've made, which would lead one to wonder, what is it exactly that they are advocating? There have also been multiple unsupported conclusions that have been made based on the research. Some of the inconsistencies in the affirmative stances are as follows. Is the team suggesting that we make limits to current levels of spending, or that we cease federal spending completely, as they indicated in their opening? Or are they asking that we focus on the initiatives that come from the federal funding and not really on the funding itself? Again, something else they alluded to in their opening. Or, as they indicated on their cross-examination, are they suggesting that all federal funding be limited so as to limit the outspending of the federal government revenue? Are we now worried about deficit spending? Or lastly, also as indicated in their cross-examination, are we now concerned with changing the way we fund education completely and really looking at to whether property taxes are the best way to do so? As you can see, there have been multiple stances that have been presented throughout this debate, which leaves one to wonder, what is it exactly that we are trying to change? What is it exactly that the affirmative is advocating? And we suggest that there are such inconsistencies because they're not able to carry the burden of proof through. There have also been various unsupported conclusions presented on the part of the affirmative team. For example, in their last cross-examination, they indicated that a study based on the Bennett hypothesis suggested that there was some causal link between federal spending and tuition increases, and that's just not the case. That particular study does not imply causation, and in fact William Bennett himself does not imply that. So that's an unsupported conclusion made by the affirmative team. There's also the suggestion by the affirmative that test scores on standardized tests, like the National Assessment of Educational Progress, are the hallmarks of what it means to have educational progress and what it means that things are getting better. Well, what we know is that standardized test scores have multiple flaws. They're not the best measure, and they're one of the things that we are no longer using them in order to rate schools and school districts because they are not really reliable. We also know that the affirmative team has suggested that the federal government has no authority or should have no involvement in education based on the Constitution. And we've already suggested that that's not the case, and that there is a great deal of research and history to suggest that the taxing and spending clause of the Constitution allows for this. So again, as you can see, there's multiple unsupported conclusions that have been made on the part of the affirmative team, which really reduce their argument. So why is federal spending on education so important? As we've indicated and as we've suggested throughout this debate, initiatives from local communities as well as the federal government continue to impact schools, and it's really important that federal funding continue to be provided so that these initiatives can have success. There really is no point in suggesting that schools do things differently and have them use their own limited resources when the federal government can provide those resources in order to level that playing field. We also know that there's a lot of disparity between affluent districts and impoverished school districts, as even our affirmative colleagues have suggested. And so federal funding is definitely one way that we can help alleviate that disparity. Federal funding in higher education is also very important, and what we know is that Pell Grants and subsidized loans allow those middle and low-income students to have access to college, and that's very, very important. We want to make sure that everybody who is capable and able and wants to attend college is able to do so, and federal spending is key to be able to do that. What we also know is that in times of economic downturns, such as what we suffered in 2008, states tend to reduce their funding to higher education. And so it's really important that the federal government continue to spend and provide resources to schools of higher education so that they can continue to maintain enrollment and continue to provide services. Because again, this would, if we did not do so, this would limit the ability of certain students to be able to attend. And that's not something that we want to have. We want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get an education if they so choose to.